Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Above the Rim Rundown, where we run down all things NBA. I am one of your hosts, Memo, and right beside me, I've got Hoops. How you doing?
What's going on, man? Overall, I'm doing good. It was a relatively busy work week, but for the most part, not too bad. And go through it, and also for the most part, just do the daily routines. Go to the gym, chill in the evening, and repeat cycle. What about you? How's everything been going?
I've been alright, just keeping myself busy, exercising a bit more, stuff like that. Nothing too crazy. But I am surprised he said that you are doing pretty good after what happened this past Friday. Uh, because past Friday, we all know, game one of the NBA Finals. No, I'm wrong. Thursday, isn't it? It was Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
uh, it is currently Friday. That is when we're recording. Friday, evening. It's almost gonna be midnight here. But yeah, we are gonna talk about that game and only that game because of our recording scheduling. So next week we'll definitely talk a lot. I'll talk about a lot more games. Uh, throughout this finals series. But yeah, today we will be talking about the first game of the NBA Finals. We will also talk about our top 20 playoff performers. We both came up with our own separate lists on who we believe have shined in the playoffs this year and give some credit where credit is due. And we'll have some fun towards the end. I'll leave that more of a as a surprise. But are you ready to talk about something that is kind of depressing? Because I feel like not only
Um,
us Lakers fans are distraught, but the whole league is at the moment because I feel like the whole league is going for the Mavericks. Nobody wants to see
yeah,
the Celtics win another
definitely.
chip. But yeah, how are
Yeah,
you feeling?
fuck over. Yeah, and the answer, going back to what you said earlier, when you mentioned about the surprise I said I'm doing good thing. Honestly, I wasn't even thinking about that game. Bring in that game, and that's a different story.
Bro, that
But
ruined my night.
if I were to not think about that game, the other stuff going on in my life, I'm okay. But for that game, it was obviously really shitty. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm ready to talk about game one. I mean, and you're right. Most NBA fans, I mean, why wouldn't they want the Mavs to win? Luka deserves to win his first ring. Kyrie winning another one would also be really cool. It's just a lot of cool, much more cool stories there than that green team over there. And coincidentally, we're both wearing Maverick colors, blue.
Yeah,
So
I actually did
worked out.
not plan that, but yeah, that's
Neither.
actually uh a funny
Yeah,
coincidence. We're both wearing blue
yeah.
for the
At
Mavericks.
least, yeah. At least we didn't accidentally wear green. That would have been a
Yeah,
little bit
true,
more embarrassing.
true. But yeah,
Yeah.
let's talk about the game where um for the first time in a bit, Kristaps Porzingis played in the playoffs. I think he came back from injury. I think he got injured in the first round, right? Sometime in the first round, and then he
It
had
was
to have
game.
a long break.
It was game three or game four. One of the two games in Miami. I remember he got hurt. Yeah. I think it was game three, maybe.
Yeah, and a big question was, is he gonna play in the finals and is he gonna start? Yes to the first question. He definitely played this game. Second question, he actually was coming off the bench. Al Horford was starting, and Porzingis had an impact early. Am I right? Like this guy, like I texted you about this. He turned into the combination of Dirk Nowitzki and Rudy Gobert that day.
Yeah,
with the
that was
way he's
crazy.
shooting the ball, the way he's protecting the rim. He would even like not block the shot, but his height alone uh would prevent a shot from going in from up close. So,
Yeah.
uh, how did you feel watching this 7'4" guy cook the Mavericks the way that he did?
Yeah, it was hard to watch for sure, especially wanting the Mavs to win and seeing a former Maverick just completely torched his former team. I will say this, I thought that Porzingis returning for the first time in over a month would have him slow down a little bit, easing into the game,
Me
and
too.
that surely wasn't the case. He just looked like as if he wasn't hurt at all. Like, bro, he was unstoppable. I thought maybe he would at least be like a little bit vulnerable,
Yeah,
but
he was
clearly
looking
wasn't the case here.
better than usual. Like he did have like a poor game, like one bad game against the Heat. I believe we talked
Yeah,
about.
game two. Yeah,
Yeah, and then he did have a decent game, but like right away, as soon as he got in, he was just making buckets like crazy. He would get any defender that is smaller than him, post him up, or like not post up, but like you know what I mean. Like he would have it in the mid range, he'll have it up, he'll get ready, and then do a little move like some uh side steps, some jabs, and then just hit the shot over them with ease too. With these, he was draining his threes. There was like this one play where he was like running and then caught the ball and made a three from deep. That was crazy. And it was all happening early. Like as soon as he got into the game, he couldn't be stopped. Like the Dallas defenders could not do anything about him. And they really didn't have this issue in past series. Like, yeah, they had to face like Chet, who could shoot threes as a big man. Cat is one of the best uh, 3-point shooting big men out there, but like they weren't like big threats the way that Kristaps was uh, in game one. So I feel like they were just not ready for it. They were not ready for that matchup. Uh, but yeah,
definitely not.
I feel like that was crazy. As soon as he got in, he was scoring like crazy. But like, what other notes have you noticed during maybe like the first half of this game, where
Yeah,
they basically had such a huge lead early?
yeah. I mean, like pretty much until pretty much like the first half of the first quarter was close. Like the two teams were exchanging baskets for a little bit. And then from there on out, for some reason, the Mavs just couldn't make anything for a while, and the Celtics were making everything, shooting the ball crazy well. And that was when the Celtics were really able to separate themselves. Obviously, Porzingis completely torching his former team. That was crazy to watch. The Celtics ended up going up by as much as 29 in the second, which was really insane. It looked like it was gonna be like a really bad blowout. But the Mavs were able to cut the deficit a little bit, and they were on at halftime. And then things were actually looking like really good for them for a little bit. I mean, the Mavs were able to pull to within eight, like midway to the third.
Oh
But
yeah, that's
unfortunately,
when
from there, that's when everything went downhill.
yeah, the way they cut it, that was when like Luka was really like cooking them. Kyrie was as well. He had a pretty bad game overall, I believed.
Yeah,
But that little
he didn't do good.
that little stretch in the third quarter, like the beginning of the third quarter, is where they really um like did some damage. They were able to um as you said, cut the lead to 8 until there was like a timeout, and then after the timeout, there was two travel calls, one against Lively, one against Kyrie, who again had a really bad game. Like Um, he had a few turnovers where one of them he like dribbled the ball onto his foot. Like this guy is the best ball handler
Oh,
in the
yeah.
league, and he made such a silly mistake. I forgot if it was him or not, but I'm pretty sure he like threw it into the stands as well, like like trying to pass it to
Might have
someone.
missed that play, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't be shocked if that happened.
Funny enough though, like he was also like he had his cool moments. Like in the first quarter, he hit this hard like crazy fadeaway on Horford. I believe in the third or second quarter, he also like crossed up Horford for a crazy layup. So he had his moments. I feel like all of his shots that like actually went in were like tough shots where like there was two defenders on him. He like barely got blocked but still make the baskets. He unfortunately couldn't make like any of the wide open threes that he had, which I feel like it was a
Yeah,
issue for the entire Mavs. Like they couldn't really drain their threes at all. But yeah, Kyrie was like 0 for 5, I believe, from 3 point range. And the Mavs really struggled not only shooting the 3 point ball, but like actually getting those shots up there when compared to the Celtics, which we've talked about. They love shooting those threes. Like Jason Tatum, he should be driving into the paint a lot more. He should be like a lot more aggressive when coming to the paint. But he will always like settle for threes. That's his thing, and that's like the Celtics thing in general. They love shooting those threes, and it worked out for them. They were making them. Everybody was making them. Al Horford, I believe, Drew Holiday made a three. We know that Jason Tatum would get his threes in. Uh, what's his name? Hauser had this like interesting three where he caught the ball above his head and just shot it like that really quickly and was able to make it in. Like everybody was dropping threes, and especially this is gonna be a numbers game. Like you can't beat the Celtics if they're draining their threes, and you could barely make any of your twos. You know, so I feel
yeah,
like
that's
this
a really
is
big problem.
yeah, it's an issue that's gonna need to be figured out.
Yeah, and I think that the key to beating the Celtics, obviously not being easy, is that the team not only needs to hope that the Celtics aren't making a crazy amount of threes, but they also need to make a crazy amount of threes themselves. Like you look at
Exactly.
the two playoff losses that the Celtics lost, game two and against the Heat and the Cavs, both of those teams were making their threes at a really high percentage those games to take down the Celtics, and that proved to be looking like the blueprint. Unfortunately, both those teams are only able to do it one time, and it wasn't enough. But I guess easier said than done, obviously. But if the Mavs are able to like make their threes, who knows? Maybe they be in a better position in those other games going forward. But speaking of which, yeah, really poor 3 point shooting performance by the Mavs. Only shot 26% from three. Yikes, yeah, that's not gonna do it. And then, as we were mentioning earlier, when the Mavs pulled to was in eight, immediately after that, the Celtics go on a 14-0 run and re-extend it to 22. That was really hard to watch.
Yeah, that was when
Um,
Jaylen Brown started cooking, and Drew Holiday as well,
yeah.
but defensively.
And then from there on out, the Celtics just pulled away and put the game on ice, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, the Celtics big three really did show up. Jaylen Brown 22, Porzingis 20, Tatum 16. For the Mavs, only Luka showed up. Luka put up 30. The rest of the team just didn't show up. Obviously, as we mentioned earlier, Kyrie didn't have a good game at all. He only put up 12 points on 6 for 19 shooting. So yeah,
I've
that
got a
was a really
question.
rough game one. Yeah, go
Uh,
ahead.
do you think the Boston crowd had an effect on Kyrie's play? at all because they were clearly like hating on Kyrie the whole time, and it's fair enough. Like I'm sure I would do that as well for a player I hate. I did see some clips
Yeah.
like outside of the arena where they had like a blow up doll, uh, with Kyrie's face on it, and they were beating it up. I thought that was a bit too far, but like in the arena,
Yeah.
with the crowd like taunting Kyrie, I feel like that's fair game. So do you think that had an effect on his game at all in game one? Do you think that added some nerves?
I think it's hard to say honestly. I feel like he maybe just damn well had a bad shooting game, and it's possible that could have added some effect. But I feel like Kyrie isn't really the guy that like goes under pressure usually. So I feel like maybe it was more so bad luck than the crowd getting in his head. But maybe it could have been a little bit of both. But I feel like it was probably more so just a bad shooting night, honestly. So hopefully he can bounce back next game. And honestly, I expect him to. I don't expect him to have two straight bad games in Boston against a team that he really wants to beat, to be honest. Um, but yeah, I think that the key for the Mavs to try their best to not have this performance happen again and better yet win the next game would really be to not start the game out flat again. Putting themselves in a big hole like that is obviously going to set them up for a really hard road to try to come back into the game. But if they're able to like hang in throughout, like for example, the Pacers hanging in throughout the game and it's close down the stretch, guaranteed that they have a better chance of closing it than the Pacers did. But yeah, hopefully they can at least like hang through most of the game and then have a better chance then, as opposed to just like letting the Celtics build a huge lead early and then having to climb their way back.
That's a
But yeah,
that's a good point because that they've created such a deep hole that the Mavs did
yeah,
win the third and fourth quarters, but because of the deep hole, they still got blown out. So they can't
right,
have like a disaster first half like that again. And I feel like their
yeah,
defense needs to be better. I feel like they shouldn't be doubling like anybody. No matter how much that person is cooking, they shouldn't be doubling because we know that everybody on the floor is gonna be able to hit a three. Like for some reason they were doubling Jason Tatum, even though I felt like he was a non-factor for basically most of the game. Like he was rebounding. Uh, I would say he was like decent playmaking, but he had like 5 turnovers, I believe. I might need to double check that actually, but I feel like he had a good amount of turnovers. But still, like no matter how much they're cooking, no matter how well uh, Tingus Pingus is doing his best Dirk impression, uh, we shouldn't. Nobody should be doubling. The Mavs shouldn't be doubling at all, because that was a huge issue. They would double, the Celtics would pass it to the open person, and they would drain those threes. That's what they do. That's what they do. So defensively, they need to change that up. Offensively, they gotta somehow get the big men going, because there was not a lot of passing, especially in the first half. There wasn't a lot of playmaking in the first half. Uh, One of the astonishing statistics that came out of this game was that Luka only had 1 assist. This is like the first time this season where he had under 3 assists in a game. So yeah, that playmaking is important,
right,
especially getting those big men to actually contribute. Because Derek Lively ended up having his worst game. He only had 2 points. He had 5 fouls in the third quarter. So that was unfortunate. And he's been really good this playoffs. So it was unfortunate that he was like a non-factor. Gafford had 8 points, good efficiency, but we we kind of need more from him. Um, PJ Washington was all right. I just hope he could make those open threes more often. Um, but yeah, the playmaking needs to be better, and defensively, I feel like they shouldn't be doubling anybody. Uh, is there anything you believe that the Mavs should do uh, to help their chances for the next game, other than making sure they don't get blown out in the first two quarters?
Yeah, obviously the easiest take is make those open shots because they miss a lot of shots that should have went down, honestly, like whether it was threes or like mid-range shots, like especially like in the third quarter, they cut the deficit to 8, but really they could have been like tied or they could have had the lead if they would have done better on several possessions. So like stuff like that, for example. And then yeah, obviously Kyrie needs to step up and I'm sure he will, honestly.
I
And
feel
same for the other
like
road guys.
Kyrie is gonna step up, and then in the next game, and Kristaps won't be as good. Like this is not Kristaps every single game. If he was, then he would been an all star this year. Uh,
Yeah.
he's not gonna
And
have this
like
crazy game again. At least not the next game.
yeah, and like if you if you mash those two factors in, then supposedly we expect the Mavs to bounce back and find a way to win game 2, hopefully. I mean, so far in this playoffs run, they've been able to do that. Like they've had a lot of rough game 1 performances. Game 1 against the Clippers got destroyed. Game 1 against OKC got destroyed.
That's a good
And then
point.
game 2, both series, come back, bounce back and win. So hopefully they can do the same thing here. Obviously, the Celtics are better than both of those two teams, so it will be a little bit harder. But I believe they can do it. Honestly, like if they can leave Boston tied 1-1 going to Dallas, that would be like really good as opposed to being down 0-2. Now, obviously, that doesn't guarantee anything, but at least it puts them in a better position. Like obviously we know like the Celtics are undefeated on the road in the playoffs and all that, you name it, but like at least they would be putting themselves in position. Like for example, if they find a way to tie 1-1 after the two games in Boston, I would assume they should be able to at least be tied 2-2 after the two games in Dallas. Hopefully, if all goes to plan. So hopefully they can at least like find a way to like split those games there to like give them a fighting chance. But
The
if
Celtics
they do
have
not
lost two game
capitalize,
twos, so maybe another game two will be lost. We'll see.
yeah, yeah, I hope so. Game 2 has for the most part been the Celtics' kryptonite as a
For some
aside from the
reason.
Pacers series. Yeah. So hopefully that trend can for the most part continue. Um But yeah, if the Mavs do lose game 2, that would be really bad. Especially even if they are going to Dallas for for games 3 and 4 after and have a chance to maybe get back in it if they can win those two home games, it's still going to be a really rough road up. So they definitely I look at game 2 as pretty much a must win for the Mavs, honestly, because they do not want to go down 2-0. And slightly off topic, but still on the topic a little bit for the team, shall we say. So the previous two NBA champions, the Warriors and the Nuggets, both of them they played the Suns on Christmas Day those seasons and beat them. So this season, the Mavs beat the Suns on Christmas Day. Is there a chance this trend can continue?
I hope
Beat the
so.
Mavs on Christmas, win the championship? I hope so. So yeah, um,
That's interesting.
if there's anything, yeah. So if there's anything to believe in superstitions, maybe just maybe the Mavs have that on their side. I hope so. But yeah, that's really cool too because obviously we both don't like the Suns. So like the
Yeah,
Suns being the human punching bag just makes it like so much better. Yeah, hopefully that can continue though. That would be nice for sure. Um yeah. I think that's what for the most part what I have for game 1 though. Hopefully the Mavs can make the right adjustments game 2 and get back in the series. And for like really for the NBA's like entertainment's sake, aside from us wanting the Mavs to win, also just not wanting blowouts in general. Like blowouts is just not good for entertainment purposes. It's better to have
right.
competitive anyway. So yeah, hopefully they can get back in this series and make it at least more competitive.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, there's a lot of factors that goes into it. One of the key things is that like any given Celtics player can explode and contribute in a
Yeah,
big way. In game 1, it was Kristaps and Jaylen Brown. Who knows what two players will step it up in game 2? Hopefully,
maybe it'd be Tatum.
maybe it'll be Tatum. I was actually gonna ask about
Hopefully not.
Tatum. How'd you feel about his performance? Because he had like 16 points. You know, Kristaps was like balling out. Jaylen Brown was balling out, so it's not like he needed to be more aggressive, but like I kind of wanted him to be more aggressive as the supposed like number one option. I felt like he should came into the game from the start trying to get his buckets, trying to get his flow, which I feel like didn't happen for like the first 5 minutes of the game, something like that. And you know, the 60 points would be lower if he didn't play during the garbage time. He played a bit during garbage time and made some baskets there.
That
So
happened.
it's looking like he's being carried at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm not
But
surprised, honestly.
yeah, it's like a narrative that, like, at least I've been saying. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've been saying like this guy has had such a luxury with all these role players that can come in and play like
Yeah.
an all star, play better than him on many nights. Like this guy doesn't play like a number one option. Is there gonna be a point where like people are gonna finally agree that maybe it is Jaylen Brown's team, or will Jason Tatum actually like bowl out throughout the rest of the series? Like, what do you think about Jason Tatum's game in game 1, and what do you think will happen throughout the rest of the series?
I think that he definitely played very mid that game and he had a really quiet performance. Obviously, as you mentioned, he didn't really need to do that much because he was indeed getting carried by his teammates, particularly Brown and Porzingis. That being said, I do expect him to have bigger performances in some of these other games for sure. I do think he's going to be a little bit on and off though. Like knowing Jason Tatum, the type of player that will literally do great and look like a superstar in one game, and then he'll look like a overrated um shouldn't even be a superstar conversation guy another game. I expect him to have a few more of like those quiet games as well. Um, if I were to put like a, if I were to have like a personal bet or anything, I would probably say that he will have a bigger game in game 2, and maybe he'll also have like a bigger game in game 3 in hopes of trying to like either regain the series lead if it's 1-1 or like further build it up. But actually, let me correct that. If it's 2-0 after the two games in Boston, I feel like he's low key gonna have a more quiet game in game 3 and get carried again. But if it's tied 1-1, maybe he'll have a bigger game in game 3 for with more like hunger and eagerness to regain the lead. But I do think that there will be like definitely a few more games where he gets carried. Most likely by Brown, but if not by Brown, it's gonna be the other role guys, like Drew Holiday, Derek White, Porzingis, those guys, you name it. So yeah, I definitely expect like a little bit of more ups and downs from Tatum, but who knows? Maybe he won't need to do crazy wonders again. Hopefully, though, if he doesn't do like crazy numbers, the Mavs can take advantage and win some of those games. Um, we'll see. Um, yeah, unfortunately, because of how much depth that the Celtics have, it's gonna be hard to contain them regardless. But if they can like limit him as much as they can, and like at least like more okay like good but not like performances from the other supporting cast, and that's probably the best chance the Mavs would have for winning.
All right, so yeah, um, game two should be this Sunday. Obviously we drop our episodes on every Monday, but we won't be covering game two because we haven't seen game two to our recording schedule. So hopefully things turn around for the Mavericks' sake, for our sake, for my mental health sake. I hope the Mavericks win and dominate.
Yeah.
But yeah, this might be it for game one talk. We could move on to our list that we both made. So essentially, what we did here, we compiled a list of our top 20 playoff performers. At first, we were going to do 15 because we weren't sure that it was going to be. Uh, we had like enough players to make a top 20, but honestly, like it was kind of hard to make the top 20. Like I ended up having a few
Yeah,
honorable
there
mentions.
were some big names that I had to leave out because honestly, they were just guys that did better than those guys that I didn't list.
Before we mention the honorable mentions, though, like what went into your mindset on like creating this list? Because like for me, it was kind of difficult. I tried to balance like playoff success, so like how far you got into the playoffs with your numbers, or like how important you were to the team, whether you're like the first or second option, stuff like that. So that's all like I had to like struggle with and try to balance. But like, what was your mindset going through it?
For the most part, same. Definitely. Part of it was individual success. Another part of it was team success, how far the players got in the playoffs, and then like consistency also for sure. Like for example, if like one of the players made it really far, they did really great one series, but then they didn't do super great another series, definitely dock them down for that if that was the case. But yeah, definitely a lot of different factors there. For the most part, the main thing was a little bit of a balance between individual success and team success and consistency.
Right, right. Okay, so yeah, we're kind of similar on our ways of thinking, but let's see if our lists are any similar because for some reason, I have a feeling that it might be like crazy different. Which, not gonna lie, I made my list like
Might be.
an hour ago. I didn't put too much thought through it, but like I did go through their stats to see like how well they did, and yeah. Do you want to share your honorable mentions before we go talk about our top 20?
I'll share my honorable mentions. And I will say because it was like challenging to like some of these guys were a little bit tough to leave out. I listed quite a few honorable mentions, I will say. Ultimately, I think I'm just gonna list five though.
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
five as
there
well.
were a few guys that I listed here. So, Sharing the results in three, two, one.
Ooh, we have very different names, but
Very different. Yeah.
okay. I asked you first, so you can share your five honorable mentions.
So, my honorable mentions I listed were Drew Holiday, Nas Reed, Miles Turner, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren. Um, yeah, for the most part, honestly, some of these guys I considered listing in the top 20 because their teams got pretty far, they had pretty good impacts, and for the most part, pretty consistent. Um, Ultimately, these guys didn't make the list because there were just other dudes that like I felt like did more. And for the most part, some of these guys are like more of the underrated guys, in my opinion. I think, um, ultimately speaking, I felt like these guys were worthy of a mention. And not to like I was gonna say not to like spoil your honorable mentions ahead of time before you reveal them, but there were a few guys I considered adding on my list also that ultimately did not make the cut.
Okay.
And I guess I can tell you why after you reveal your guys.
Okay, I feel like I know why because I'll review my guys, which
Yeah,
is
reveal your list first.
it includes Damian Lillard, Jamal Murray, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and James Harden. And I feel like the reason why you didn't put some of these guys is because most of them got bounced in the first round.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But I was gonna add on, so okay. For the most part, I'm gonna be honest. Most of these guys on your list here, honorable mentions, did not make my top 20 either. Um, I did put Jamal Murray on there. But I will say this, okay? For the most part, the reason why I didn't list those guys is because they got bounced really easy. Um, I'm gonna say specifically why I didn't list Booker and Durant. The reason was because their their plus minus was so bad in those
Yeah, I
series.
saw that,
Devin
especially
Booker,
Durant.
Devin Booker, yeah, Devin Booker was a minus 12 and Kevin Durant was a minus 18. Like they were putting up numbers, but like to be swept on top of that, like I couldn't put them on my list. And I actually thought about putting them. I kind of did give them a mention in my honorable mention originally, but then I thought, yeah, I think these five guys are more worthy, so I left them out.
They're the honorable
But yeah,
mention for your honorable mentions. Is that what you're saying?
yep, honorable mentions for the honorable
Fair
mention.
enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough. But
but yeah, for the most part, all of those guys you listed were early outs. And then for me, most of these guys like made it pretty far, but a little bit more on like the role player side.
I do
So
like your Miles Turner pick. Miles Turner and Nas Reed definitely should be uh, shouted out. They both had a good run. Also, Drew Holiday, but
yeah,
like he's a Celtic now.
honestly, I thought it was mostly Drew and Nas that I contemplated putting on my actual top 20 list. But then there was like, oh shit, I forgot this guy. He needs to be on the list instead. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Um,
was hard. We were talking about like, we can't make like a top 25. There's not enough players to talk about, but clearly like it was pretty
we're
difficult.
wrong.
Yeah, we were wrong, but
Because honestly, if we did top 25, I probably still could have listed five honorable mentions, honestly.
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So should we actually get into this? Get into the top 20? Seeing how different our uh honorable mentions are, I'm very curious on what our top 20 is gonna be like. And I'll spoil one thing
Definitely.
before we share. I do have a good amount of
Okay.
players that like were bounced from the first round, so don't be too
Okay.
surprised about that. But yeah,
I do have a I do have a few guys that were bounced in the first round also, I will say that. Um, but yeah, shall we start by reviewing 16 to 20
Yes, let's do
or
that.
20 to 16, shall we say?
Yeah, 16 or 20 through 16. Yeah, and if you want, you could go first. You could share your list first.
All right. So I got my list down here.
Kind
Um,
of similar, actually.
Number 20, yeah, somewhat similar. Number 20, I got Bam Adebayo. Number 19, I got Chris Middleton. Number 18, Jamal Murray. Number 17, Pascal Siakam. And number 16, I got Anthony Davis. So, the reason why I put Bam towards the bottom at this list is because he did do pretty good for the most part. But I feel like he wasn't really like as I think that definitely his performance went under the rug due to the fact that the Heat got gentleman swept. Not really not to blame him obviously because like they were without their best player Jimmy Butler. But for the most part he was still good, so I had to put him on the list. Um Chris Middleton, I also put him on the list because he was pretty good in that lone series against the Pacers. I
Very
mean,
underrated.
yeah, very underrated. And he was the reason why the Pacers were at least able to like somewhat hang in that series because like
The Bucks.
obviously yeah, that one game that they lost. I mean, the one game that they won without Dame and Giannis. He was the one that put up numbers to keep them in that series to extend at least one more game. And in the series, obviously, he averaged 25 points. That's pretty good. And Dame, I will say this. I thought about putting Dame on this list, but the reason why I didn't is because he only played in 4 games, as opposed to Chris playing all six.
Yeah, that's why I had him in my honorable mentions. Like he did have like halves where he'd scored like over 30, which was crazy,
Yeah,
but again, he was injured. He didn't play all the games, so that's why he's in my honorable mention.
yeah. And then as far as Jamal Murray goes, he could have been higher if it wasn't for like his struggles shooting from the field. Because like you look at his numbers on the box score, doesn't look bad at all. But his like shooting efficiency wasn't that high. But the reason why I needed to put him on this list was obviously because unfortunately he had those clutch moments. Like obviously those 2 game winners on the Lakers, which was really hard to watch for us. But it showed that like Jamal Murray was the type of guy that no matter how bad of a shooting night he has, he will find a way to still step up when it actually matters down the stretch.
That's
So I had to
so
include him on this
Yeah,
list.
that's a really good point. Jamal ended up being in my honorable mentions list due to like his inefficiency, and I guess
And I understand that.
I am a little salty about what he did to the Lakers. So maybe he should have been on the list
Yeah,
due
me
to
too.
those like game winners, but uh,
I
yeah, he
guess
ended up being my in my honorable mentions.
yeah, I guess we shall revisit after you reveal your full list. Like maybe at the end we can have a little like do you regret including or not including the certain guy type reflection. But yeah, we'll talk about that later if wanted. Um but the next guy I included Pascal Siakam.
He
It
was
was
balling.
honestly like he had a pretty good playoff run. And particularly the Celtics series when Tyrese got hurt, he was the one that was keeping them in the games. Without him, they probably get blown out in all those games. But like even like going earlier in the series against the Pacers, he averaged 22 points. I mean, no, my bad. Against the Bucks, he averaged 22 points. And then against the Knicks, I think he was like a little bit more quiet, But even then, he still averaged 20 points. And then against the Celtics, he was the leading scorer again and averaged 23 points. So I got to give Pascal a lot of credit for stepping up when he needed to. And then number 16, Anthony Davis. So AD, I definitely thought about putting him higher, but ultimately there were a few guys that I felt like deserved a little bit higher rankings for like more reasons than one. But he did pretty good for the most part, I will say. Averaged 28 points, and he was 53% from the field shooting. I think there were like, I don't remember like his specific performance stats every single game of the series, but there, from what I recall, there might have been like one or two games where he was like a little bit more quiet, or maybe it was more so like certain halves he was a little bit more quiet. Um, but definitely AD, he did pretty good in that one series, and so I had to mention him on the list. So I believe for the most part, those are the reasons why I listed the guys I did from 20 to 16. Um, Memo, would you like to reveal your list from 20 to 16?
Yeah, so at number 20, I have Josh Hart. Number 19, Chris Middleton. So we have Chris Middleton on the same spot. Number 18, I put Bam. Number 17, Paulo. And number 16, Pascal Siakam. Um, yeah, number 20, Josh Hart. I just really wanted to give him as much credit as possible because that man was playing like every single minute for most of the games, to the point where like he ended up like getting injured, or it might not be because of playing so much minutes, but he that was like the only reason why he kind of slowed down. I remember Jalen Brunson didn't start off on the best foot, so Josh Hart would step it up. He would drain these like very clutch threes as well. He was really there for the biggest moments, where the Knicks needed him the most. So I felt like he deserved a shout out. Um, and yeah, moving on, Chris Middleton, as he said, he had clutch moments as well, like tying games up. He was draining crazy threes, looking like Kobe out there, honestly. And it was actually really cool to see Chris Middleton ball out like that because there was some conversations on maybe this guy's washed, maybe he doesn't have it anymore, but he proved everybody wrong. He went out there and was um, contributing as much as he could, even though, as we all know, ended up being bounced in the first round. Um, your number 20 is my number 18, which is Bam Adebayo. I basically put him in there because he was like the only superstar on the Heat and was just trying his best out there. And I thought he deserved something for doing the best that he can with the situation that he had, facing the best team in the league, the Boston Celtics. So I just wanted to shout out Bam. Paulo Banchero had a pretty decent debut, this playoffs. This is his first playoffs, and yeah, he did get bounced, but nobody even expected him to be in this situation. And the fact that he ended up like averaging more points in the playoffs than he did in the regular season shows that he really is there to play. He really is there to win uh, important basketball games, and he ended up being like the lone source for the offense on the Magic. So, uh, yeah, a lot was on his shoulders, and he did pretty well for such a young guy. So, shout out to Paulo, and then my number 16th uh, person on the list is Pascal Siakam, which he did a good job covering. But he had he averaged a good amount of points. He had some big games where he scored like 35 plus. So Yeah, shout out to Siakam. And anything you believe is egregious with my list so far? Because right now I do like your list. I think um, someone should be higher, but you'll find out soon. But
Yeah,
uh,
I
what do
have
you
an
think?
idea who you think, but we'll leave it for later. Yeah, for the most part, I don't have a problem with your list. I will say, Josh Hart being on the list is a little bit of a more like sleeper, but I can understand like I'm not mad at that pick. I can understand he did have his big moments. Like maybe there were some other guys that could have made the list over him, but like he did have his moments, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, maybe I should have swapped him with Jamal Murray, but fuck Jamal. I don't want to give him credit. Should we move on
Okay.
to the next section? The what is it, 15 through 11?
Yeah. All right. So moving on to 15 through 11. So I can start off by reviewing my list. So at number 15, I got Paulo Banchero. Number 14, I got Tyrese Maxey. Number 13, I got LeBron James. Number 12, I got Karl Anthony Towns. And number 11, Tyrese Halliburton. All right. So starting out with Paulo Banchero. Um, as you mentioned earlier, his first playoff series, he did really good for his first playoff appearance. Um, 27 points, almost 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Not bad for a first time go, especially knowing the fact that Magic, I think a lot of people expected them to be better and like maybe be in the conversation for the playoffs. Not a lot of people necessarily really thought that they would like be that close to advancing. Like probably they would have thought that they would get destroyed in the first round if they were to make it. Now obviously the Cavs are not that good, but like still credit to them. They fought hard and almost advanced to the second round in large part due to Paulo's performances. So the next guy on my list, Tyrese Maxey. So I put Tyrese Maxey on this list because he was pretty good for the Sixers all year long. But in this series, not much different. Averaged almost 30 points in the series and shooting 48% from the field, 40% three-point field goals. That's pretty high efficiency for a point guard. So I had to give him his flowers there for sure.
You know what? I've
Next
just
guy.
realized that I don't have Tyrese Maxey on my list or even my honorable mentions, even though I was really thinking about it. So you know what?
Ooh,
As you were talking about like things that we regret, that's probably the biggest
yeah.
one. Is not adding Tyrese
Okay.
Maxey.
All right. Remind me at the end if that like there's any more regrets or all that stuff.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. But the next guy on my list is LeBron James. So I think that LeBron is another guy that could have easily been higher on this list if not for the Lakers getting eliminated in the first round because like the sample size was just too small. But same as AD, actually exactly the same. Both of them averaged 27.8 points in the series. LeBron's shooting percentage was a little bit lower than AD's shooting percentage. Ultimately speaking, I think the reason why I ranked LeBron higher is just due to the fact that like it just seemed like he showed up like a little bit more in like the bigger moments to me, honestly. And like obviously you can bring up that game 2 brick at the end, but like for the most part like LeBron is still LeBron, so I had to include him there. Um Definitely could have been higher if the Lakers went a little bit further in the playoffs, but for how far they got, I think this is a pretty reasonable spot for where they are for him for how far they made it. And then next guy on the list, Karl Anthony Towns. He had a pretty solid playoff performance for the most part. I think that in the conference finals he wasn't quite as good, but like for the most part, like first round against the Suns, averaged about 18 points, which is like still pretty good on 51% shooting overall and 39 from three. Not bad for a big man. And then, actually, my bad. That was actually the stats against Denver in the second round. But yeah, against the Suns in the first round, he actually did better. Over 19 points and 53% from three and 53% overall field goal percentage. So that was really good. And then obviously in the conference finals, he was like not quite the same. Still did okay, average almost 20 points. Shooting percentage went down a little bit, 38 overall, but what really went down was his 24% three-point field goal percentage that series. But overall, though, I had to include Cat on this list because one, making it that far, two, overall being pretty consistent, and three, as a big man, like I think he was overall pretty efficient. I had to include Cat on the list for all those reasons. The next guy I ranked is Tyrese Halliburton, and I will say this: he could have easily been higher if he didn't go down injured. And I know he only missed technically like 2.5 games, but ultimately speaking, I think that there were just a few guys that were a little bit more worthy to be higher on the list. But he certainly didn't disappoint. Like obviously towards the end of the season, he was like a little bit inconsistent, but when he needed to show up big, he was still able to deliver. In the first round, he was like kind of like mid-ish, only averaging 16 points. But he did shoot 43% from the field, so that wasn't bad. And then in the semifinals against the Knicks, that's when we kind of got like Tyrese back on track. He averaged 21 to lead the Pacers and shot a really efficient 54% overall and 44% from three. That was pretty good. And then unfortunately his season got cut short against the Celtics, but to make it to the conference finals for a team that really wasn't expected to go that far before the season, it was really respectable for the Pacers overall, even if they probably shouldn't have been there, obviously due to like Knicks injuries. But huge reason was because of Tyrese Halliburton, so that's why I had to include him on my list. So that being said, I'm gonna hand it over to Memo. Want to reveal your list from 15 to 11?
Yeah, I'll say I like your list. Uh, I'm surprised Tyrese and Cat are that high, but it's not like I have them a lot lower than you. But to share my list, at
Yeah.
number 15, I have Tyrese Halliburton. Number 14, I have Karl Anthony Towns. Number 13, I have Rudy Gobert. Number 12, I have LeBron James. And number 1, I have Joel Embiid. And the reason why I have Tyrese lower than you is because, like, yeah, he did average like a good amount of points. It's was playmaking, all that, but uh there were games where like he was not aggressive at all. He was not playing like the superstar that he is. He would have like only 9 points in a game, like, and he did that like a few times, scoring under 10. So I felt like, as a superstar that we're trying to like claim that you are, you need to do a bit more scoring. The playmaking is there, defense isn't. So if you're not playing defense, you gotta at least score. So that's why I have him a little lower than you. I also have Cat lower than you. He did impress me a lot this playoff run because I've been kind of a Carl Anthony Towns hater for a bit. Like we've talked about this a few times, but he did impress me, especially on the defensive side. I think without his defense, they probably wouldn't have won against the Nuggets. So shout out to him there, but he does still make those like stupid fouls, stupid decisions in late game situations. He'll shoot stupid shots. Sometimes he'll make them, but sometimes he'll miss them. So that's why I have him a bit lower. But he was pretty impressive this off season, I guess. Number 13, I have his teammate Rudy Gobert. I felt like his defense was a lot more impactful. At one point, he had like the highest plus minus in the playoffs. Like he was uh, vital for a lot of the Timberwolves games. And yeah, he did get cooked by Luka, but everybody, most players would get cooked by Luka. So I feel like he got overhated on that front. But yeah, Rudy Gobert did a really good job doing what he's known for, which is defense. Number 12, I got LeBron James a little higher than you, just barely. But he did average a good amount of points. He did uh, do his thing. You know what LeBron does at an old age. He balled out. I do wish his defensive um, I forgot what word I was gonna say, but I wish his defense was better. There was times where he was just letting Aaron Gordon score with ease. So, um, spoiler alert: I have Anthony Davis higher, and that was a big reason why is because of LeBron's defense. Well, Anthony Davis did pretty good on the defensive end, but we'll talk about him later. So but at the end of the day, it's LeBron. So shout out to him. And then I have Joel Embiid, who, um, although had those dirty plays against the Knicks, he was still pretty good, averaging a good amount of points that I am trying to look up, but due to my setup, I can't see it. But he scored like over 30 points. His plus minus was like plus 7. He had didn't he have like a 50-point game as well? I could be wrong, but he had like some crazy games. So
He did.
he was looking a lot better than past playoff performances. So that's why I have Joel this high on my list. But what do you think about my list so far? I talked about my nitpicks.
Um,
So do you have any nitpicks for my list?
Not really. Overall, I think that these numbers are, for the most part, reasonable. I did put Joel Embiid higher, but I can understand why you put him where he was, honestly.
Yeah, obviously, like he was amazing, but he was also knocked out in the first round. So I can't put him too
Yeah.
high, but 11 is a good
Yeah.
spot.
I mean, I know. I mean, I assume you have a few other guys knocked out in the first round a little bit higher, right?
Maybe definitely one. One.
Yeah.
I have one person.
But yeah, there's definitely like several different factors to consider. So
Yes.
yeah, we shall see.
But let's reveal
Um,
our next set of players. 10 through 6. Who do you have?
all right. So I will start with my list. So number 10, Nikola Jokic. Number 9, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 8, Joel Embiid. Number 7, Donovan Mitchell. And number 6, I got Jaylen Brown. So, I see by your face you were really shocked by some things, I'm sure.
I
But
definitely.
let me
You gotta explain
explain.
Nikola Jokic. You gotta explain that one.
Oh, I can definitely explain, okay? And here's why, okay? Like I know it sounds crazy that he's number 10, but it just seemed like he was like a little bit lackluster this playoff run, in my opinion, honestly. Like he was good. He was not the same as the championship run last year. Like if they would have won, like here's my thing about it. The Nuggets had so many deficits in these two playoff series, and I feel like a lot of it probably was because like he didn't quite do as good as he could have been, honestly. And I think that another part of that is like the rest of the Nuggets team. Like they could have stepped up more too. And like granted they were able to like have a lot of crazy comebacks against the Lakers. Against the Wolves, it was a different story. I mean, like they won some games against them, but they also choked a 20-point lead in game 7, and then they got blown out a few games also. I just feel like he wasn't quite the same, honestly. Like his numbers were good still. I mean, like 28 average in round 1. I feel like some other guys were a little bit more impressive, honestly. And starting off with the next guy I listed. So, Shea Gilgeous Alexander, he had a really impressive playoff run, and like he did really good. Obviously, round 1 against the Pelicans with the leading average against was 27 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. And then in the Mavericks series, he actually did better. Like, arguably speaking, Shea was probably damn well the best player in that series against the Mavs. It's just that the team didn't quite step up as much. Averaged 32, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. So I thought he was like really impressive this playoff run. So I ranked him pretty high. Okay, now number 8, Joel Embiid. Now, I will say this. I understand why you ranked him lower because he got knocked out in the first round. But me personally, I need to consider how impressive his games were. Like, um, obviously he was by far the Sixers' top performer in the playoffs. Um, he averaged 33 points, and he had like that one. I think it was game 3 or game 4. He scored like 50 or whatever. Obviously that was his top performance of the run. He was a lot better this playoff series or this playoffs as opposed to his previous history in just one series, and it was pretty good from the field. I think like 44% overall, 33 from 3, which is honestly respectable as a big man, a center specifically, and average 1.5 blocks. It was pretty impressive. And then Donovan Mitchell, obviously in his team's like and limited playoff appearances, shall we say? Like, well, the thing is, he actually played in a good amount of games. I think he played in like 9 games or like 10 games because obviously round 1 went to 7. He was really good though. The first round he averaged 29, 5, and 4. And then the second round he was 32, 6, and 5 in only I believe he got injured in game 3, so 3 games. And he was obviously the reason why they won a game in that series, something that the Indiana Pacers couldn't do for some reason. Yeah, it was because of Donovan's like really clutch shooting and hot shooting performance. So even though it was like somewhat limited, Donovan Mitchell did like really good this run. And then Jaylen Brown, honestly, I thought about ranking him higher, but there were just like some other guys that I thought like were a little bit more impressive, honestly. But his game really doesn't need much explaining. Obviously, him and Tatum are like the 1A 1B like on and off switching, and like you could really argue that Tatum is. You could argue that Brown is the real one and Tatum is the two, but till it can be like inevitably argued, I think that Tatum is for sure still the number one guy. That being said, though, like Jaylen Brown, obviously, like doing wonders. First round, he's averaged 23 points on 52% field goals, 32 from three, quite efficient. Round two, not much different. He was 23 points on 60% field goals, which is very efficient, and 43% from three. And then against the Pacers in the conference finals, he averaged 30 points. That was his best series so far. And 52% from the field, 37 from three. Really impressive there. Yeah, definitely had to include him pretty high on the list. So, that would be my list from 10 to 6. Memo, you want to reveal your list from 10 to 6?
Yeah, but before I do, I gotta say, with Nikola Jokic being that low, like spoiler, I have him a lot higher. I think that's crazy.
I
Like,
see.
cause you said like he didn't seem as dominant like as he did last year, but looking at his stats, like they're pretty similar. He averaged two less points, one less assists. So nothing too crazy. And then he did have like those moments where he had like a near 40-point triple double when he received his MVP award. So he was there, pretty dominant and just doing his Nikola Jokic stuff. But uh, it is what it is. It is your list. Just having Embiid
Yeah,
over
could have been
Jokic is
higher, but
a little weird to me. But
it is what it is. Hey, my opinion, your opinion.
yup. But yeah, let me go at number 10. I have Anthony Davis. Number 9, I have Kyrie Irving. Number 8, I have Shea. Number 7, I have Donovan Mitchell. And number 6, I have Jalen Brunson. Anthony Davis was awesome during his short stint in the playoffs. Very short, unfortunately. But he was averaging almost 28 points, 15 rebounds, which is almost 16 rebounds, which is insane. About 2 blocks. He was doing his thing, and again, I have him over LeBron because of the defense. Like this guy was playing like as good as he was in the 2020 playoffs. Like, and to see him like come back to the season after being ridiculed for being so injured and saying that last playoffs he can't consistently score past 20 points past 2 games. It's cool to see him bounce back and actually like ball out in the playoffs and do his thing. Unfortunately, he got bounced in the first round, but he proved a lot of people wrong uh, in his short stint. So shout out to him. Number 9, I have Kyrie. Obviously, he's in the finals, so he's doing great. He had his big moments throughout the playoffs, but he also had some duds, which like it's easy to forget about. But he did have several games where his shooting wasn't there. He was scoring like around 10 points. So he could be more consistent, but obviously he's doing pretty good since he's in the finals at the moment as the number 2 guy. Number 8, I have Shea, who's been consistently awesome on both ends of the floor. I feel like there's not much I could say. Like he was really carrying the Thunder at points because his surrounding teammates weren't really helping, um, at least offensively. But Shea was always there, contributing and being there for the biggest moments. So was Donovan Mitchell. The same could be said about Donovan Mitchell. He was really carrying those Cavs teams until he got injured. Had huge games against the Magic, and yeah, like he's just proved once again that he is a playoff riser. So shout out to Donovan. And then number 6, I have Jaylen Brunson, who had a slow start, as I mentioned earlier, but really picked up the pace and was really helping out the Knicks out there offensively, just draining buckets after buckets. Like, he couldn't be stopped. So shout out to him, I guess. But yeah, that is my little group. Anything you think is crazy off of my list so far?
Crazy? I wouldn't say crazy. Like obviously there were certain guys I ranked higher, ranked lower, but for the most part, nothing crazy. I could understand why you put these guys in the position that you put them, to be honest. Um, okay.
Yeah, okay. So let's finally reveal our top 5 playoff performers for this year's playoffs. And yeah, I'll have you once again reveal your top 5 first.
All right. So without further ado, we are at our top five, and here is my list. Number five, I got Jalen Brunson. Number four, Kyrie Irving. Number three, Anthony Edwards. Number two, Jason Tatum. And number one, Luka Doncic. All right, so starting with Jalen Brunson, obviously put up crazy numbers this playoff run. And it's unfortunate that his playoff run got cut short due to like all those Knicks injuries getting plagued like crazy. They definitely should be in the Pacers. That was disappointing. And if they would have been in the Pacers, guarantee you they would have at least like given the Celtics a little bit of a run for their money, even if they didn't win that series. That being said, Jalen Brunson being the huge factor, he averaged 36 points in the first round against the Sixers and 43% field goals and 30% threes, which is like not horrible, not great, but it's like good enough, honestly, knowing his high volume shooting percentage. And then in the semifinals against Pacers, his numbers weren't as big, but the Knicks had a little bit more balance. He still averaged 30 points, 46% field goals. His 3-point percentage was about the same, a little bit higher, 32%. So Jalen Brunson had a pretty good playoff run. So he was worthy of being in the top five for my list. Number four, Kyrie Irving. Obviously, really clutch playoff performances this year. There were a few games where he kind of was a little bit more quiet, but for the most part, I thought that he has been like phenomenal for the Mavericks and really big for Luka having another superstar as the number two option. Like, obviously, he tried that duo with Porzingis, and unfortunately, it just didn't work out very well. Obviously, we saw what he's capable of doing, like game one, but like, yeah, it just wasn't meant to be, unfortunately. But like this new duo they have is doing wonders. And Kyrie in the first round averaged 27 points and 51% field goal percentage, and a very impressive whopping 45% from three against the Clippers. That was really good. And then against OKC in the second round, Kyrie averaged was a little bit lower, I think, 16 points, but he was still really efficient though. 44% field goals overall, 42% from three, not bad. And then the conference finals against the Timberwolves was by far his best series, dating up until the finals. He averaged 27 points that series and 49% field goals overall, which is pretty impressive for a guard like that. High volume shooting. He was 38% from three, so really impressive there. Um, Next guy on the list, Ant. So he was having like he was especially really good in the opening 2 rounds. Against the Suns, he averaged 31 points on 51% shooting and 44% from three, which was like mighty impressive. And against the Nuggets, he had a really good average as well, 28 points, 50% from the field, which is pretty good. 37% from three. So huge reason why they upset the defending champs in the second round. And then against the Mavs in the conference finals, not as good. He tried though. Still averaged 25 points on 43% field goals and 41% from three. Like obviously all those games are close, and the Mavs, I mean um the Wolves probably really could have been a lot closer. Maybe could have even won that series, but obviously everything happened for a reason because they didn't close as well. That being said, now in the top two, Jason Tatum. So obviously, like he did have a little bit of consistency issues in certain games, but for the most part, he was still really impressive. Round one, he averaged 22 points, 42% field goal shooting. 3-point shooting wasn't as great, only 29%. Obviously, he didn't need to do that much because Celtics loaded roster. Round two against the Cavs, he did better. 27 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists in the series. And his shooting volume was his 3-point percentage still wasn't good. 27%. His field goal percentage was for the most part pretty good, 44%. And then that brings us to the conference finals, where it was actually his best series. 30 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. And he was definitely the clear cut well actually no, not clear cut. But he definitely had the clear cut best series of the playoffs compared to his first 2 rounds. 46% from the field and 31% 3-point shooting, which is definitely better in 4 categories than one. So Tatum definitely has had a good run despite some inconsistencies here and there. But number one is without a doubt Luka Doncic. And his game just doesn't really need much explaining. Round one against the Clippers, he averaged 30 points, 41% from the field overall, and his 3-point shooting wasn't really that high, 24%, but doesn't really need to have a high volume, clearly, because he's able to impact the game in other areas. And then against OKC in round two, 25 points, 11 rebounds, and 9 assists per game. He did wonders that series to help them have another upset. And this series, his shooting was definitely a lot more efficient overall. 45% from the field, and his 3-point percentage was as high as 39% as compared to the 20 something. So that was definitely much better there. And then by far his most impressive series, the conference finals against the Wolves, averaging 32 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists per game. Luka was just like tearing the Wolves apart. Obviously, he had the game winner in game two, doing wonders. And his shooting was also really efficient that series. 47% overall from the field and 43% from three. So, yeah, Luka clearly showing that he was the best player of the playoffs, and you can even argue maybe the best player in the league overall. But that being said, that would be my top 25 list. Memo, it is your turn to reveal your top five.
All right, so at number five, I have your number two, which is Jason Tatum. He's been mostly consistent. Like, yeah, he's there were games where he got carried by his teammates, as we just talked about in game one. But for the most part, he did average a good amount of points, especially as you said in the conference finals. But there's a reason why my number four pick got the Eastern Conference Finals MVP over him, which is Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown is number four on my list. Thought that he's been the best player for the Celtics so far this playoff run. I just believe he's there for the biggest moments, um, unlike Tatum. And yeah, I just feel like he's got that dog in him, that Tatum lacks. So ultimately, because of how important uh, Jaylen Brown has been during certain moments, like that game tying three against the Pacers in game one, that's why I have him over Tatum. Number three, I have Anthony Edwards, who had some stinkers. Let's be real. He had some stinkers in the second round, especially in the third round against the Mavs. But he also had some great games, scoring over 30 a bunch of times, especially in the first round. Playing great defense, able to slow down certain players like Jamal Murray. He was locking him up at times, and he was just an amazing leader for this team. And I can't wait to see how he progresses moving forward because he is definitely a superstar. He showed out this playoff, so I want him to continue doing great things. Number two, I have your number 10, which is Nikola Jokic. Again, I feel like you just played like Nikola Jokic. You played like the MVP of the league, doing Nikola Jokic things, whether it's scoring efficiently, playmaking to get easy buckets for his teammates, rebounding like crazy, having a near 40-point triple double. Like, he was definitely not the reason why the Nuggets got bounced in the second round, that's for sure. He was doing his best out there, just playing like Nikola Jokic, who is debatably one of the greatest players in the world. But ultimately, number one, I gave it to the greatest player in the world at the moment, which is Luka Doncic, who had a slow start due to injuries, obviously, especially that knee. It's been bothering him. So the first two rounds weren't his best, at least to his standards. But it was really the third round where things picked up and he started playing like playoff Luka, showing the world that he is that guy. And now I'm very excited to see him in the finals, possibly, hopefully, maybe winning his first ring. So we'll see. But yeah, that is my list. Any thoughts on my overall list?
Um, Overall, your list, I will say, not bad. Obviously, as you mentioned, there were a few guys that maybe could have made the list. As far as who you would take off to replace those guys, I'm gonna leave that to you if there's anything you would like to talk about, like afterwards. Um, Overall, I think your list is and I mean, I think there were some guys that clearly I listed higher or lower. I will say this in your top five. As much as I would have liked to have listed Brown over Tatum, because obviously I like Brown better than Tatum. I just feel like Tatum overall was better, so I just had to include Tatum higher personally. Um, but like I can see where you're coming from and like your personal preferences and whatnot. So um, it's okay. Yeah, I will say for the most part, that's what I gotta say about your list. Um, I'm sure you would also like to have a few comments as well, right? Regarding my list, or and then we can talk about our own list stuff after.
I guess not too crazy. Like I already complained. I already bitched at you. Like you already took a
You
beating
ranted
from me.
already.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it was the basically just Nicola. I guess is way too low, and
Yeah,
I guess
and I
there's
will
other
say
player
this.
like Kyrie, maybe a bit too high as well. Maybe Joel's a bit too high, but like at the end of the day, it's your list. Like, uh, it's not the
Yeah.
end of the world.
Yeah, and I will say this. Looking back, probably I did rank Jokic a little bit too low. I don't know. I just think the reason why I ranked him this low was because I felt like those other guys I listed higher than him just like seemed a little bit more impressive to me, like what they were doing. Um, but I can argue like maybe I could have like at least swapped Jokic and Embiid maybe and possibly even put him higher than Mitchell. I don't know about SGA though. I feel like maybe I would still put SGA over Jokic. Um, but yeah, overall, yeah, I think that one of my bigger regrets probably would be the Jokic should have been higher thing. And I guess that can bring us now to like personal regrets on our own list. Um, I think for me on my list, the main thing is just Jokic probably should have been a little bit higher. And then other than that, like I definitely when I was making my list, I definitely had to make like several adjustments throughout the process. Like originally I was almost thinking about including Drew Holiday, Nas Reed, and then I forgot certain guys. Like I left off certain guys. I'm like, oh shit, I need to put these guys. Yeah, sorry. These guys are gonna have to be honorable mentions. And I will say this, one of the slightly controversial ones that I didn't put on my list, maybe if you want to consider controversial, Rudy Gobert. Um, I feel like he definitely could have been worthy of being on the list, but like when I was looking at his like stats when doing my research, which I know like being like the box score, I mean like there's always a lot of those memes like for those people that like only look at the stats. It's kind of misleading because like a lot of the good players do a lot of stuff that are not on the stat sheets. But I will say this, when I was looking at the stat sheet, like the overall series overviews, it seems like a lot of the times Rudy is like pretty like not even in the top 5 on the Timberwolves like leading stat leaders. Like round 1 against the Suns, he was top 3 performer, but round 2 against Denver, granted he did miss like a game or two. He was he was ranked like 6, or he only missed one game. Slight correction, but he was only ranked 6 overall in that series. And then against Dallas, he was also 6. And then on top of that, I agree with you. He definitely got like over a lot of over hate for like Luka making a shot over him, but definitely did get burned a little bit. So I will say that. Um, yeah, I think that honestly the reason why I didn't include him was because of like it seemed like he could have been a little bit better overall, but yeah, definitely I could have at least been worthy of an honorable mention. I feel like some of these other guys maybe were a little bit more I guess some of these other guys I felt like I needed to talk about a little bit more that I wanted to put them instead. Because like I did have Rudy in my honorable mention, but he was probably like the 6th guy listed. And 6 players might be a little bit too much, so I just listed 5 of them. But aside from that and like Jokic ranked a little bit lower than he probably should have been, overall I think I'm still okay with the list I made. That being said, I know you mentioned a little bit about your list on what you maybe would have changed earlier, but I guess would you like to add on or re-emphasize anything?
Add on, no. I think what I said earlier is the only change I would make, which is adding Tyrese Maxey probably at 20 and replace him with Josh Hart. Um,
Mhm.
and then Jamal Murray could stay as a honorable mention.
Oh,
Honestly,
so you're gonna keep Jamal Murray on honorable mention?
yeah, yeah. I prefer the rest of the guys. Honestly,
Okay. Yeah. So you think that do you think you would actually literally add Tyrese but just have him at 20? Like you wouldn't want to move him ahead of any other guys on your list?
yeah, because he was like the second best player on a team that got bounced in the first round. You know, like how much better could we consider someone like him compared to someone who contributed a lot more to a winning team, you know?
Mm. I can see where you're coming from. Yeah. All right then. I guess that would be pretty much a wrap on our top 20 playoff performers list then.
Yeah, that should
Um,
be it. And I think we could move on to the last thing, probably the last thing, due to how long this episode
yeah.
has been, which is something that we did last week, and it was pretty awesome. I had a lot of fun doing it. I think you had fun as
Yeah.
well. So we are
It
gonna
was fun, yeah.
we're gonna spin the wheel. Give me a second. All right. So we got the wheel. The wheel is back, and we are essentially gonna spin the wheel and make a starting five roster, depending on the team that lands on. So if I land on the Houston Rockets, I get to choose any Houston Rocket in history. That we're doing all time this time. Last week we did current rosters. This week we're gonna do all time rosters, and so like if I land on the Rockets, hey, I'm gonna choose Hakeem Olajuwon as my center. And since I picked Hakeem, and if Hoops choose or lands on the Rockets, he cannot choose Hakeem. He would have to choose someone else, like James Harden, your favorite player in the world, right?
Yeah, totally.
So I believe I started last week. So would you like to start this week?
Okay.
All right.
Um, let's
Ready?
do it.
All right. We are spinning the wheel. The wheel is spinning. Hoops has the first pick, and look at that. It lands on the Houston Rockets. Are you going to choose James
What
Harden?
a coincidence. Um, am I gonna choose him? No. Yeah. Um, Without a doubt, I gotta pick Hakeem Olajuwon for this one. Easily the top Houston Rocket of all time. If I were to pick like my favorite Houston Rocket, I probably would pick like Yao Ming or T Mac, but gotta pick the best player, Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Elijah, good pick. One of the greatest centers of all time, so I can't hate. It is my turn. I am spinning the wheel. The wheel is being spun, and I landed on the Indiana Pacers. Interesting.
I have a
They
few
don't have.
options. I would.
I have a few, but not a lot of options. So I feel like I'll go with the obvious pick. And so my shooting guard, I will be having Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller is going to be my shooting guard from the Indiana Pacers.
Okay, not bad.
All right, ready for yours?
Yeah.
The wheel is spinning. Let's see what you get. The Phoenix Suns. Interesting.
Okay. Phoenix Suns. So, there's like a few options out there. I think that there's one maybe like a little bit more obvious one. Let me think real quick. My options.
I mean, you got. I don't want to help you out,
So
actually.
I gotta.
So never mind. I'll be
Yeah,
quiet.
don't do that. Yeah, don't help me out. I gotta make my own decision to make this more organic. But yeah, there's like a few options I can go with.
DeAndre Ayton.
Obviously I should consider. I'll totally do that, right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously there's a few things to consider, like the the depth of each of these positions. Like obviously all time makes it honestly all time makes your options like so much wider than like the current rosters. Current rosters you have to think more outside the box. All time like um there's definitely like a lot less room for like failure, shall we say. Instead of less room for error, less room for failure. Yeah, that being said, I'm gonna go with Steve Nash at point guard.
Okay. All right. That's a good pick. That's a good pick, honestly. So can't blame me for that. Now it's my turn,
Mm-hmm.
so I am spinning the wheel. Let's see what I'm getting. Ooh, okay. Hmm. Okay, I'll go with Dirk Nowitzki for my power forward. So I obviously got the Dallas Mavericks. I'll take Dirk. I feel like Luka is up there as well. I think Luka is just as good. But, there's a lot of great point guards in the league's history. Not a lot of power forwards, I believe. And we all know Dirk is one of the best power forwards and probably the best foreign player as well. So I'll take Dirk on my team. He's playing as my power forward.
All right, not bad.
Time to spin the wheel. Let's see what
Spin.
you will get. Oh, almost the Suns again, but not quite.
Could have been Suns again. All right, that means I will have to go with okay, so just to make things clear, Tim Duncan was a little bit of like a flex guy. Like he played both power forward and center.
Yeah.
I think that I feel like towards the end of his career, he was kind of like a little bit more centerish. But I remember like NBA 2K11 would list him as a power forward.
He's definitely a
So
power
like
forward. Like, a
he
lot
was
of
definitely
people
flex.
consider him the greatest power forward of all time. So I feel like he
Yeah. So
has to be on your
I
team.
think he's a power. Yeah. So that means obviously I gotta take him power forward.
Yeah, that's a really good pick. Tim Duncan as your power forward kind of
Hey,
stumps
Tim
my
Duncan versus
Dirk.
yeah, Tim Duncan versus Dirk. Legendary battles.
Yeah, true, true.
You can argue who you think is better because I think it's really close, honestly,
It's close, I
between the
guess,
two.
but Duncan got that defense. So,
Yeah.
all right,
Yep.
I'm spinning the wheel, and the wheel has been spun. Now, ooh, New Orleans Pelicans. Okay, can we consider the New Orleans Hornets at all? Am I allowed to choose from them?
Um. Ooh.
Because
I
they're
don't
from
know
New
how we want to do
Orleans.
this because the thing is like, don't they? Wouldn't their history go to Charlotte Hornets because of like the mascot name Hornets? It's kind of
Probably.
confusing because like yeah, it's really confusing because they're from the same city as the Pelicans. They formerly wore the Hornets, but then it's like they share the same name as Charlotte Hornets. Hornets. So it's like I feel like maybe what we should do to determine that is confirm Google search. Um, does the New Orleans Hornets have the history of the Charlotte Hornets or the Pelicans? I think it might be Charlotte Hornets, but like
Uh,
Okay, I'm gonna ask you this, okay? Like you don't have to tell me who you want to pick yet because you haven't made your decision. But like, do you think that the indication of if New Orleans Hornets does count would like drastically change the structure of your team?
change the structure of my team. I guess so. Yeah, but I feel like I
Hmm.
have a good backup. I have a good backup.
Okay, so maybe it won't hurt you too much if you can't take the Hornets player then, right?
Yeah. Did you want to look it up if like the New Orleans Hornets
I'm
history?
curious about it. That
Okay.
does New Orleans Hornets history go to Charlotte or New Orleans
All
or
right. I
Pelicans?
guess I'll
I
look
feel
it
like
up.
not Pelicans, but like yeah, just see what happens.
Does the New Orleans Hornets, what is it, count
History or yeah, count for Ch-
for Charlotte
Pelicans. Just
Hornets?
ask does it count? I guess just ask does it count for Pelicans, I guess.
Uh,
Maybe we need to rephrase it, huh?
yes, I'm not seeing anything good. Does the
How about
new
instead of Charlotte Hornets,
Oh,
the
it would help if
Pelicans
I spell things correctly.
or history?
Hornets count for. Okay. At a May 20 press conference
And
announcing the
for the like
Charlotte's Bobcats official team name changed to Hornets, it was also announced the Pelicans agreed to transfer the records and statistics of the Hornets the, to the current Charlotte franchise. Okay, so essentially what it
I
says
mean it goes
here is that the New Orleans Hornets, their records
are
and
still the
statistics,
Pelicans.
no, goes to the Charlotte franchise. So I will
Mm,
not be able to choose from the Charlotte Hornets lineup.
New Orleans Hornets, you mean,
New
right? Oh
Orleans
yeah.
Hornets. Correct, correct, correct. So
Hmm.
for my
But
pick,
honestly speaking, yeah. As I was gonna say, like honestly speaking, I feel like it would make more sense if it went to the Pelicans, just because they played in the same city, New Orleans.
yeah.
I feel like all of New Orleans should be a franchise history, and then all of Charlotte should be its own. Like for example, Bobcats and Hornets merged, Pelicans and New Orleans Hornets merged. But I can see why. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I
Your pick.
wonder where does the history of the Bobcats go to? Also to the Charlotte Hornets, I guess.
I think I would say probably still the Charlotte Hornets, but the thing is, like,
That's crazy.
The Bobcats are so bad. Like, do they even want their history? I wouldn't.
Probably not. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, okay,
yeah,
okay.
but I feel like probably it would go to Charlotte Hornets.
Right. So for my pick for the what was it? New Orleans
Pelicans.
Pelicans. Hold up, let me. Okay. For the New Orleans Pelicans, I will go with Anthony Davis and he'll play as my center. Who I
Okay,
was gonna
not bad.
pick, I was gonna pick Chris Paul as
Chris
my
Paul,
point
right?
guard. Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah, I
do.
knew it. Yeah, I mean, like both of them are good options.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah. Yep.
We're spinning the wheel. The wheel has been spun, and we got the Memphis Grizzlies.
Memphis Grizzlies. Okay. So I gotta think real quick. Like the Grizzlies' top players from the position I need. Um, okay. Even though I don't know if I would like necessarily take one of those guys. In this situation, um, I know that like Vancouver Grizzlies would be a part of the Memphis Grizzlies history because
Yeah.
the same name. Yeah, there. So like that one we don't really need too much to um say, but let's see. So I need shooting guard or a small forward. I feel like the Grizzlies really didn't have a lot of like elite small forwards or shooting guards. So I may need to think outside the box here. And I will say this, like, would you agree with me that it would be like, okay, I'm gonna say this. Probably it would be considered cheating if you pick a guy that was like way out of their prime, thinking that you can consider them as like in their prime, correct? For example, this guy was really good back in the day, but then he was washed on this team. Like it shouldn't, I shouldn't be taking the guy because he was washed when he played for that team.
Yeah, I feel like
Do you
if you
think
pick a
it's more
player,
fair?
the player has to be as good as they were on that team. So
Agree.
like if he landed
Okay.
on, you don't need an example. It makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, the reason why I asked this is I remember when we were doing the Lakers list, you chose Steve Nash when he was not even good on the Lakers. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was being sneaky with the wordplay though. That's why I chose him.
Yeah. I feel like in that sense, you probably shouldn't have been able to take him, but we'll let that slide. That's in the past. But yeah, this time we'll not do that.
Yeah, I was being
Okay,
sneaky.
yeah. All right then. So I need either a small forward or a shooting guard. Damn, the Grizzlies had like no elite like small forwards or shooting guards seemingly.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a few good ones, but not like elite though.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think of my options real quick. Okay. Honestly, with how little the options are, yeah, I don't know. The main okay, so the main guys I can really think of that I can possibly take really are like Rudy Gay and Mike Miller. And I feel like for the Grizzlies, probably Rudy Gay was better. Um, Fuck it. I don't have many options. I guess I have to take one of those two guys. Um, you know what? I'm gonna take Mike Miller over Rudy Gay.
Whoa, I did not expect that.
Yeah. Mike Miller was like actually pretty cold-blooded back in the day, so I'll just go with him.
Well, Rudy Gay played like an all-star for a good chunk of his career. Uh, I
He was good.
I would have chose him over Mike Miller. I would have chose Desmond Bain, honestly, over Mike Miller as well. I feel like he could be an all-star
Well,
one day.
the thing is like the thing about Desmond Bain is like isn't his main position point guard?
No, that's Ja.
Really? Because like when for some reason when I search him, it lists him as a point guard. But I guess he plays both though.
I think he plays small forward at times as well.
Oh damn.
Yeah, but you chose, so it's
Yeah.
my
It is what
turn.
it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. We're spinning the
I mean
wheel.
the thing is like even if I picked him, he's not really that much better, I don't think.
When healthy, he's a baller. He's a baller. Okay, I got the
Yeah.
Toronto Raptors. Ooh, okay. I have a couple options. I have my point guard as small forward open, and I think I'll take for my small forward Kawhi. I could have gone
Okay.
DeRozan. I could have gone maybe Vince Carter. Maybe for point guard Lowry, but I think Kawhi Leonard as my small forward is the pick.
All right, not bad.
Now let's see. Is this your last spin?
It would be last spin.
All right. Let's see who you are getting, and you got the Charlotte Hornets.
Hmm. Well,
You got options.
ooh. Yeah, I gotta think real quick though. Um, because the position I need specifically is shooting guard.
Oh, shooting guard? I thought point guard. My bad. Never mind.
No, remember
Never mind.
I already drafted Steve Nash.
Right, 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 right.
Okay, I already I got an option then. Shooting guard, I'd have to take Del Curry,
Del Curry. Okay.
who was actually really good back in the
Yeah,
day.
he was
So I'm
good.
not
He
mad at
was
that one.
yeah. I would
All
have
right, so that means
I would have like started flexing like crazy and put like LaMelo as shooting guard. I feel like he could play shooting guard, but it whatever.
well he's more of a point guard though.
But the man could shoot, so I could see him being a
He
shooting guard
can a
next to
little bit
Steve Nash.
inconsistent. Yeah, a little bit inconsistent, a little bit injury prone, but yeah, he
Yeah,
could if he wants.
better than Delta Curry though, but whatever. Last spin.
Yeah, but Dell as shooting, he's good.
Yeah, and I've got the Phoenix Suns. Unfortunately, you took the obvious pick, which was Steve Nash. Um,
Hmm.
you know what? I'm gonna do something crazy because I know this player played a lot of point guard this season. So
Okay.
Devin Booker is gonna be my point guard.
Booker.
Yeah, he had to play a lot
Okay,
of
I'm
point
kind of
guard this season due to Bradley Beal being on the team. Oh, actually,
yeah.
wait, no, I already said his name.
Do you
Actually,
actually think?
I said his name,
Yeah. Do you
so I'm
actually?
going with it. I'm stating a business.
Yeah, but do you actually think there's another guy you could have took that was better
Yes,
after
yes,
you said that
yes,
though?
yes. I regret it. I could have
Okay,
had
so obviously you took Booker, but who would you like to have taken
Chris Paul.
instead?
Oh,
I
but
was
like,
gonna say
but then, no, no, never mind, never mind, never mind. I thought you had Chris Paul for a second, but that's not true at all. Yeah,
no,
I should have
I
took
had
Chris
Steve
Paul.
Nash.
I should have took Chris Paul, but
Yeah, the thing is obviously Chris Paul was not in his prime anymore, but he was still really
yeah,
good.
he was
But
an
I
all
will say
star.
I was shocked that you took Booker though, especially knowing that you don't like him and all that.
Yeah, but I gotta
Yeah.
win. But yeah, it's whatever. I'm fine with the list. I guess. I guess I should have chose
All right.
Chris
So
Paul, but it is what it is. But do you want to share your five?
overall, your team is not bad though. I will say. My team, I'm good for it for the most part, except for the small forward. That one was hard to pick. The Grizzlies one.
But yeah, who's in your
I
team?
will say this though. Yeah. So point guard Steve Nash, shooting guard Del Curry, small forward Mike Miller, power forward Tim Duncan, center Hakeem Olajuwon.
All right, and then I got for my point guard Devin Booker, shooting guard Reggie Miller, small forward Kawhi Leonard, power forward Dirk Nowitzki, and center Anthony Davis. So I was at least able to get like all stars, which is really good. That'll help my case. It's just Devin Booker as point guard maybe was a mistake when I could have had Chris Paul.
Yeah. So I think that last week we kind of agreed that my team seemed a little bit better. This week I feel like your team is definitely better.
Yeah, we're gonna need to
Now,
do a tiebreaker. That's what we're gonna need to
yeah,
do.
we will. So I guess looking at our personal views, we're in a way 1-1 for
Yeah,
spin the wheel.
but we do have that
Yeah,
video idea that probably will be able to break the tie for sure.
yeah. And I will say this, I probably could have, should have taken Desmond Bain, but the only thing is, if I did take Desmond Bain and I still landed on Hornets, who even like at small forward could I have taken for the Hornets? Maybe it would have been Del
Nobody.
Curry anyway as a flex. So I don't know. Maybe the team would have been slightly better, but not a lot better, or maybe not even better. Who knows? But yeah, I think that last week I took the edge. This week you take the edge.
Yeah, we will do a tiebreaker and it'll be really cool. But that's for
It will
a
be.
later episode. If you want to check that out, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you are following our podcast on podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Please do that. And yeah, thank you for all the love and support lately. We actually on YouTube hit 10K total views, so that is pretty cool. Our shorts are doing pretty well, so I'll crank out some more this week so that there's more content out there besides the podcast that you all should hopefully be listening to. But yeah, check out our socials, check out our podcast on all the platforms. Give us 5-star ratings. Subscribe. Anything you want to say before we head out?
Pretty much just echoing what Memo just said. Thank you guys for all the support and watching our content, like, commenting, and subscribing. If you like everything, please do all that. And as mentioned earlier, the content is going to keep on coming. Obviously, we're in the NBA Finals now, season's winding down, so um, the rest of the stretch should be very interesting. And stay tuned for that. And then, of course, we're going to add in a lot more fun stuff like the TikTok games, mini games. And then the summer, we'll come up with some cool surprises for you guys also. So definitely look forward to all that and make sure you guys stay tuned.
Yeah, I've got some good ideas for content this summer, so look out for that. But that is it for us today. This podcast was a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be, but it was fun. It was
Same.
fun.
Yeah, it
But
was fun.
yeah, thank you all for watching. Take care, and we'll see you next Monday. Bye bye.